Thanks for staying on with us. You're watching and Consider This. Sharaad is to my right. I myself is Ibrahim. Sani. We're talking about the news of the day as well as the current events that are happening this week. But again, we can't get over the news of the week because today alone we've seen a lot of news, including that of long-standing ex-president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. He actually passed away earlier today at a private hospital in Singapore. He was 95. But it's not about just the occurrence of his death. It's about his legacy that he left behind. He was, of course, the strongman that has led Zimbabwe over a few decades, actually about 4 decades, I think.
Yeah, since the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, what's fascinating about Robert Mugabe is that if you read the papers today, Ibrahim, you'll notice quite a difference in approach. Well, whether you read a piece on Al Jazeera or you read a piece from, say, The Guardian in the UK, very different ways in putting the story together, because Robert Mugabe is a very divisive figure, not just in his country, but internationally. He's often celebrated in the African continent for the strong positions he's taken against what is seen as Western imperialism or Western hypocrisy and so on and so forth. Remember, he was a freedom fighter fighting a white minority government in Rhodesia, then called, led by Ian Smith, a racist government, a white racist government, and he defeated. So he's got a lot in terms of history. People respect him for his tenacity in bringing down the white Rhodesian government.
Okay, what we want you to consider is this. Is it necessary for dictators to come in, strong-armed individuals to come in and shape the country in his or her own image, and mostly, by the way, in his image, not necessarily her image? Do you think that we, in this part of the world, require that kind of dictatorship, the likes that we've seen in this part of the world called Singapore, a democracy, by the way, that was led and still led by one party, led by one man, and being shaped by one idea? Do you think that it's necessary?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's that. And also the question of legitimacy, right? So Robert Mugabe's legitimacy, especially for younger generations.
Look, he was voted in. He's legitimate enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, he also, you know, can be charged with suppressing the democratic opposition, right? So he stands charged for the murder of, or what some people say, reports would say, the near genocidal suppression of people in Matabele land in the 80s led to tens of thousands of deaths there. So he didn't play fair, and I think this is part of the problem. So in sort of holding his credentials as a freedom fighter, there's on one hand, but then in independent Zimbabwe, he was a dictator and he didn't play fair. And so
but the story of long-term dictators do take place again and again. If it's not Mugabe today, it's something else tomorrow. For instance, Tun Mahathir has come back from the whirlwind tour that is currently happening right now. He is coming back from a trip to Cambodia, Vietnam, Vladivostok in Russia. Currently he is in Japan, receiving I guess, a doctorate, an honorary doctorate. Our crew has been following him in some of these countries, including that of our colleague Najib Arif, who is in Japan right now, reporting on the ground. Can we see what Tun Mahathir is up to in terms of building foreign relations, trying to build bridges in economic progress? What is he up to?
Yeah, so he, in Japan also, I think, met with the Bank of Japan. But I think that the important thing and I, you know, as I questioned earlier, Syed Sadiq's travel itinerary and, you know, the cost of his travel, with Tun Mahathir you have a very different scenario, because you're potentially bringing businesses and sealing important diplomatic relations in these things. And I think our leaders do have to do that. What is interesting, though...
Are you indicating that Sadiq is not a leader?
He is a leader, but to cheer on your team at a football game perhaps has fewer economic implications for the nation as a whole.
Okay, got it.
So that was my point. Tun Dr. Mahathir met with, of course, Narendra Modi of India, and that was very important. It was reported that the question of Zakir Naik did come up, at least broached by Narendra Modi himself. Saifuddin Abdullah, our foreign minister, came out to say that Tun did not respond to that. So that seems to be the end of that story.
Well, that's an interesting topic to mention, Sharaad, but it's also important to note that we're talking about 94, 95-year-old man making whirlwind tours across many, many countries. It's also important to note that his, I guess, virality is still ongoing. He's very excited, he's very energetic to see all these world leaders. I don't know whether it's important for us to note that age is a factor and whether or not we...
Well, I don't know. I think we've long discarded this issue about his age. I mean, not least when, you know, he crashed that panel discussion at Sina all those months ago.
Yeah.
But I think what is important is that
I see what you mean. Okay, yeah.
Malaysia is, in fact, seen as an important player, right? So you have Dr. Mahathir meeting with some of the most important leaders of the more powerful nations of the world, India, Russia, and so on and so forth. And the fact that Malaysia punches above its weight internationally, I think is something to be not so much proud of, but
it is. I disagree. We should be proud of.
Yeah.
Look, it's not often that leaders of relatively small countries like Malaysia, in terms of our neighbors, for instance, get to meet leaders like Modi, leaders like Putin. I mean, we saw that clip where Tun Mahathir was actually in the same room with the Russian president, asking for the Russian assistance in terms of economic investments. I mean, it's pretty interesting for our leaders to actually be able to meet these world leaders and ask for aid or ask for investment ideas.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Mahathir will probably go down in history, and following our discussions about Robert Mugabe, as an elder statesman, right? So somebody who's respected on the world stage for not just bringing development to his own country, but in terms of thought leadership across the world. And South-South cooperation, something I think Dr. Mahathir will always be remembered for, and that I think is really going to be his legacy, much more positive than the divisive legacy that Robert Mugabe leaves behind.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more about the ongoings of corporate Malaysia. Don't go anywhere.